Did you catch AOC lying on social media about her vote on Green's Israel funding amendment? She said she voted yes, but the record shows she voted no. I don't know how she's tried to defend herself on this, but it's an indefensible proposition for someone like AOC. For someone of AOC's status as like a leader, as a leader of supposed to be a leader of the left in this day and age, in this time and space, like there's no excuses. And I think like there are people from all different shapes, colors, from every other kind of background. I'm not even talking like there are people like Maddie Iglesias wrote an article today, I think, talking about how like Israel doesn't need our funds. Okay. I'm sorry. You can't get outflanked by Maddie fucking Iglesias if you're AOC. Okay. It is completely unacceptable. It is completely unacceptable. And I'm shocked that she's just not doing the thing that she does that leads her to make these decisions initially, which is listening and learning and doing standpoint theory and like hearing from all sides, right? Like this is the type of stuff that I think is just like really bad instincts. This is something that I've like criticized AOC on, especially when it comes to foreign policy before. And I'm like, I don't understand why she's just like doubling down on it. I don't get it. I genuinely don't understand it. Because like it is so obviously a bad fucking move. It's ridiculous. Like this is the type of shit that you expect from like Chuck Schumer, you know what I mean? Not AOC. And yeah, it was everyone on the entire spectrum from, you know, RevComs and people like the ACP people, but like even liberals were like, what are you doing? mostly liberals love AOC and yet even liberals were kind of in awe of her decision on this. And did she get AIPAC? No. Did Bernie vote the same way? It's in the House. Bernie's in the Senate, but I don't know what Bernie would have voted for if given the opportunity. But these guys try to make a distinction between defensive weapons and offensive weapons. Okay, this distinction does not matter. It does not matter. Let's get started on the AOC situation real quick. Does anyone have the initial like thing that started it? Because this was it was an amendment, Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment to cut off offensive aid to Israel and also even defensive aid to Israel, which is completely oblivious. Completely irrelevant in this point of contention. So, but again, like I said, she basically pushed for this as a messaging bill in a way that is no different than like when Bernie Sanders does this. Bernie Sanders has tried to veto weapons transfers to Saudi Arabia in the past, knowing full well that it's not going to pass, but he's still trying to make an effort. Okay. And the same goes for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Titan Greene, regardless of being a fucking right-wing sociopath who is perhaps cynically getting on the Israel train, it doesn't change the reality at all, was pushing for an amendment to stop all weapons transfers to Israel, including defensive weapons. This distinction does not matter ultimately because as we know, Israel uses the defensive shield that it has to be as belligerent as possible while it conducts its genocide and continues to bomb other countries, including but not limited to fucking Syria now. As a matter of fact, as you know, Syria is in a state of turmoil at this moment. And so like the idea that like Israel, oh, this is just a defensive, this is our ally and we're giving them defensive weapons is like, yeah, okay, that doesn't mean anything unless you're going to be a real one and say, if you were to turn around and advocate for Israel while it's in the process of doing a genocide, to say that like, well, they need anti-aircraft systems and they need our consistent, unlimited support so they can be as belligerent as they want without any repercussions whatsoever, then you have to say that about every country. You know what I mean? Why don't we give Hamas an Iron Dome then? It's literally protecting the civilians. I think they deserve it much more than Israel does, as a matter of fact. Israel's gotten it for years and years. Why don't we give Russia some anti-air defense systems then? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? We're there. Do you think there's no civilians in Russia? You think there's no civilians in Gaza? All Gaza is pretty much all civilians. What are we talking about? Mostly children, as a matter of fact. So unless you advocate to give anti-aircraft weapons to Nazi Germany while it was conducting the Holocaust and doing World War II because there were civilians in the territories that we were bombing and we must, Nazi Germany has a right to defend itself, you can't make this fucking argument about Israel. It's ridiculous.
Armed nation, and they're less than $400 billion in debt. They are quite a thriving and successful nation. Their economy is strong. They're doing a great job for their people. However, the United States, the American citizens, are $37 trillion in debt. Yet we're continuing to send hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid constantly to foreign countries. This has to end at some point. Our problems here at home for Americans and the American taxpayer that are paying for all of this have gotten too large. And I also want to point out that Israel bombed a Catholic church in Gaza, and that an entire population is being wiped out as they continue their aggressive war.
I'm sorry, under no circumstances are you allowed to be outflanked on an issue of morality that, like, the overwhelming majority of the American public can see by Marjorie Titan fucking Green, of all people. This is a ginormous failure of the Democratic Party. This is not even a question. This should be a moment for the Democrats to, in unison, advocate for this exact same thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, so that Marjorie Taylor Greene looks like an outsider who's a hanger-oner on this issue, okay? What are we doing here? Even from a cynical, cold, calculated framework, if you're just interested in the politics of it all, if you're just interested in winning, okay, the idea that you would allow someone like this fucking psychopath to actually be the voice of moral clarity in American Congress is insane to me, okay? It's completely unacceptable. It is completely inappropriate. It is such a disastrous failure of epic proportions that the Democrats are allowing the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world and the Tucker Carlsons of the world to basically be the thought leaders on an issue that 80% of the public is on board with, okay? This is ridiculous. It makes no sense. It would be like if the Democrats were looking at the Epstein file saga and turning around and being like, let's not release them actually. Trump is good on this issue, okay? It would be like that. It blows my mind how bad the Democratic Party is. Oh my God. Not gonna lie, I thought you would defend her. What are you talking about? There have been plenty of instances where I've actually criticized AOC, specifically on this stuff. I am a fair assessor, okay? I grade politicians on a curve, especially at a time when we know for a fact that the majority of Jews in New York, for example, voted for Zohran Mamdani over Andrew Cuomo. Zohran Mamdani was uncompromising in his anti-Israel position. As a matter of fact, he said he was going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay? What are we doing? At this point, any politician that has their ear to the ground, that refuses to recognize how much this calculation has changed, is not doing it because they're oblivious. They're doing it because they want the conversation to shift. They are trying to lead people back into a pro-Israel position. That's it. That's it.
Gaza. Now, we're heartfelt about the October 7th tragedy, that when people were killed, innocent people were killed. However, at some point, the United States needs to recognize that Israel is a strong country. They are nuclear armed, and they are capable of defeating their own enemies. It's right to stop funding this.
It is unexpected. I will say it is unexpected. I know everyone will say, AOC, I told you so, AOCIA, blah, 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 blah. Listen to me, okay? Many people who say that are completely oblivious to her past voting record, okay? There have been instances where she has voted consistently to like defend Israel and stuff like that, which is, again, a non-starter for many, for every congressperson pretty much. But today is different, okay? We are 2 years into a genocide and the attitude has changed. The attitude and the opinion, the public opinion has changed, okay? It's unacceptable. It is unacceptable after 2 years to still stand in defense of Israel to say, oh, there's a difference between defensive weapons and offensive weapons. There is no difference. This is someone who is refusing to read the fucking room. And the irony here is that AOC is supposed to be a leader in the Democratic Party, a progressive voice in the Democratic Party. What are you doing? I'm not saying she's like compromised by AIPAC or whatever. That's not my opinion at all. My opinion is this is a profoundly bad political move. You guys oftentimes, like you did with the Zoran endorsement, will go along with these narratives that like she is, CIA compromised, all this shit. Okay. That's not the case. It's something worse than that. Ironically enough, it's silly. Let's see what Felix had to say. Truly and shockingly stupid. Beyond the nonsensical distinction between defensive and offensive weaponry, the state of constant warfare with neighboring countries is putting us in so many self-defense situations. Why is the one country entitled to free refills? It's fucking insane. You think it was the Bill of Rights. Israel has enough resources at its disposal for universal health care, a relatively gigantic military, and the Haredi Dole program. Do they just deserve free interceptor missiles more than other countries? I don't even think this is cynicism. AOC isn't a cynic. Stupid. A true cynic seeking to become the standard bearer of the electoral left would at least recognize the moment they're in. This is just pure idiocy and cowardice. That's what I mean. This is just a bad political decision for someone who wants to run for president. It is a bad political decision. It is the expectation. This is the expectation you would have. A bad political decision such as this one is supposed to come from the likes of Kamala Harris. It's not supposed to come from someone like AOC. Okay? It's just an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly bad political decision. I think she's 100% running for president in 2028 and thinks AOC doesn't even support defensive weapons. It's just too much heat and impossible to explain to ADL fed reporters, so is vibing through it, despite it making no sense. This, of course, doesn't justify the defense, but it's my read. Yeah, that's quite likely. But I think she's also such an article head that she's afraid of legitimizing MTG by voting on this. I think that Felix's assessment on this is entirely correct. She doesn't want to look like she's aligned with Marjorie Taylor Greene under any circumstance whatsoever. And she is way too beholden to like the old school woke, the old school woke people that work in these campaigns, that woke as a pejorative. Like, I mean, like rad libs, you know what I mean? People that are like, why would you go on the Joe Rogan Experience type people, which is just like, you need to be a shark. You need to be a shark. You need to be vicious. None of that stuff works anymore. We're in the post-Trump era. Okay? That's it. F the rad libs. Who gives a shit? It does not make any sense whatsoever. Anyway, so initially she said, where was it? Initially she said something along the lines of like, Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment does nothing to cut off offensive aid to Israel nor end the flow of U.S. munitions being used in Gaza. Of course I voted against it. What it does do is cut off defensive Iron Dome capabilities while allowing the actual bombs killing Palestinians to continue. I have long stated that I do not believe that adding the death count of the innocent victims of the war is constructive to its end. That is a simple and clear difference of opinion that has long been established. This is a bullshit, an incredibly cowardly way to fucking defend this decision, by the way. It would have been better off if she just said like, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene and it's a cynical messaging bill or something. Even then it would have been cowardly for her to not vote for it. But it is ridiculous to say, oh, it's defensive weapons. What do you mean defensive weapons? Who gives a shit? What are we talking about? Everyone at this point, especially someone like AOC, should be aware that Israel gets to fucking literally do as much violence as possible because they know full well that we're always going to be footing the bill on the defensive side, okay? It's not about like letting Israeli civilians die. This is not the case, okay? The point is, if Israel feels like they are left unguarded, okay, or if they feel the pressure from BDS, for example, boycott, divestments, and sanctions on the state of Israel, then they will stop doing genocide. That's the whole point. It is the least violent means of stopping Israel. The argument is Israel will stand down if we stop giving them weapons, defensive weapons and offensive weapons, just all weapons. And it's ridiculous because no one would make the argument, yeah, look, we were only selling Germany anti-aircraft ammo. It was just defensive weapons. It would be ridiculous. That would be a ridiculous argument.